All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started today. Thanks again for taking the time out to join our webinar. The title is Increasing Revenue and Customer Loyalty with Real-Time Product Recommendation Engines. And so my name is Emily McAuliffe, and I'm going to help moderate the webinar today. So there's just a few housekeeping items before we get started. Everyone is muted, so if you have any questions, please feel free to ask via the Q&A feature within Zoom. And you can ask questions at any time, and at the end of the webinar, we'll go ahead and answer your questions live on the webinar. And if you have any issues, you can go ahead and send a message directly to the organizers. I think it should say Emily McAuliffe on there if you have any issues at all. So we're also recording the presentation if you can't make it through the whole presentation today, which should be under an hour. We will send you the recording and the slides and some other materials for you by the end of the day today. So I'm going to get started by introducing our speaker, Gaurav Deshpande. He's TigerGraph VP of Marketing, and I'll pass it over to him to introduce himself.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Emily, and so good to have everybody on the call here joining us today. Thanks a lot for taking the time out of your busy day to join us. I am responsible for driving marketing here at TigerGraph. I'm really excited today to share with you retail industry best practices. We have TigerGraph is a graph database. I'll talk a little bit about technology. But before we get into the technology, let's talk about the business use cases for retail itself. So in terms of an agenda, I would like to talk about the big elephant in the room, which is Amazon. Let's talk about the Amazonification of retail. And I would love to share with you 3 stories of retailers who have competed successfully and are winning against Amazon. It's a great examples of people who have used customer intimacy and focus and personalization to transform the industry and grow their market share against Amazon or create new niches that Amazon can't possibly compete in terms of personalization or customer centricity. So I'll talk about that. I'll talk about what is the current approach to addressing the personalization and customer intimacy. What are the ways we can improve that? We'll talk about a concept called real-time deep link analytics. It's a new concept that has been slowly developing. TigerGraph provides world's fastest graph database with analytics on top of it that will help you transform your environment with this particular concept. So we'll spend a little bit of our time going into that, as well as looking at the technology itself to wrap up, to understand. And of course, last but not the least, I'll give you a host of news you can use or information you can use to get started on your own strategy for beating Amazonification, holding back Amazon, and in some cases, partnering successfully with Amazon to drive your space forward. So I'll also share as a part of the 3 stories of retailers who have successfully used part of Amazon's portfolio effectively to further their own agenda. So with that, let's talk about the network and data age itself. So this particular decade has been called the decade of data. And that is for a reason. When we started this particular decade in 2010, we had 1 zettabyte of estimated data. That's a very interesting term, zettabyte. It sounds like something out of Star Wars. A zettabyte is essentially 10 to the power of 21. You heard me right, 10 to the power of 21. That's how many bytes of data was estimated to be, digital data was estimated to be around. What's the amazing part is that it's growing at 45% every year from 2010, and it's estimated to reach about 50 zettabytes. So 50 times growth in 10 years. That's what we are talking about. As we have more and more data, interesting part is the companies that are able to harness the power of that data, that are able to look at the interconnections between data and use that information are the most valuable company. What do I mean by that? Combination of market capitalization for Apple, Facebook, Google, and Amazon. Okay, 4 companies: Amazon, Facebook, Google, Apple, put together is $2.5 trillion. In the S&P 500, this constitutes 15% of the total valuation. So these these 4 companies contribute to 15% of the total valuation across all of the S&P 500 stocks. That has the biggest companies in the world, like IBM, like GE, like Walmart, like the rest of them. So the sheer volume, why are these companies so valuable? So good question to understand always is when you look at something, you take a step back and say, why are they so valuable? And the reason why they are so valuable is because they have valuable data. Facebook knows about likes and dislikes. Google knows what we are looking for, what we are searching for across the world, as well as in the United States, Europe, and rest of the geographies. Amazon and Alibaba, they model the consumption of the world. So if you look at Amazon, large part of United States e-commerce, like 44% of e-commerce sales go through Amazon. That is a substantial way to model and know what people are right now, what they need, and what they are putting actually their money for, what they're buying right now at this particular point in time across the entire United States and across the entire world. And it keeps on growing. So this valuable data about knowing what the customers want, what their needs are, what their interests are, what their preferences are, all of that information, that's the reason why these companies are so valuable. As you start to look at casting your own strategy around it, of course, you have to deal with, in retail especially, you have to deal with the Amazonification of the retail industry. Here are some statistics that are based on CNBC. So CNBC did a special feature on Amazonification. As a part of that, One Click Retail ran a survey in 2017. They had some of that statistics. 44% of all e-commerce sales in 2017 ran through Amazon. That is just 4% of the total retail sales, but that's growing at a double-digit clip compared to a single-digit or flat growth for overall retail. The second statistics here, fastest growing categories, also another thing to worry about, because luxury beauty was not supposed to be something that Amazon should have been able to get into and expand on. Groceries, of course, you know about Whole Foods acquisition. Pantry items, you know about that, as Amazon does more and more Amazon basic type rollout approaches. Furniture, this was another interesting part where people always thought that furniture items is something that people like to experience. You like to sit on a chair before you buy it. You don't want to sit on a couch and see how comfortable it is. That also is defying expectations, where Amazon has 33% growth in that category. So those are the 4 top categories. And then last but not the least, in Bloomberg survey, 49% of online shoppers visit Amazon first when searching for products. Now that's down from 2016, where it was 55%. So Google certainly is giving Amazon a good run for their money, but it's worrying nevertheless, because when you start at a web storefront, you are inherently biased to continue with them, right? So obviously the Amazon, the big elephant tsunami is coming. What do you do about it, right? Do you simply roll over, or do you fight back? And how do you fight back? So first part of my presentation is about talking about 3 customers, 3 retailers that have successfully fought off Amazon's march. So we'll talk about Lululemon. It's a Canadian retailer and a manufacturer. We'll talk about Poshmark, which is a startup that is focused in the fashion styling area. It's an online marketplace. And last but not least, we'll talk about Wish, the multi-billion-dollar e-commerce giant that is giving Amazon and Alibaba a run for their money. So we'll talk about all that stuff. With that, let's jump into the first one. I'm going to let you guys look at this for a minute. So let's look at how powerful Lululemon is as a brand. I have a picture on the left-hand side, and then I have a picture on the right-hand side. Right? So left-hand side is what is called a capri pant. I was educated by my daughter before this webinar to say what it is. So it's a capri pant used for exercise. And then right-hand side is a regular, what I call tights. They both look really nice. They look very similar in terms of their styling, right? Professional pictures, they all look good. Which one do you think cost $118 and which cost $11.99? So my colleague here is pointing to the one on the right to say that's the $118, and then my daughter, when she saw it, she said the one on the left is the $118 one. Actually, my wife said that, and my daughter agreed with my colleague to the one on the right. So without further ado, let's do the big reveal and understand which one is the expensive one. Now, here, my colleague Mingshi, our VP of Engineering, is spot on. So he gets cookie points, and those of you who guessed it right, reach out to me. I would love to buy you a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, depending on if you are in the Bay Area. So here is the important thing, right? When you look at these pictures, they're all professionally shot. They are both really, really good pictures, and they are perfectly functional products. So what makes somebody fork out $118 for the one on the right-hand side? In fact, I have a personal story to share with you about this. My daughter's birthday was in early first week of May, and she comes to me and says, Daddy, I don't want anything for the birthday except one thing. I'm like, what do you want, honey? She's like, oh, I just want these Lululemon track pants. And I thought it was like maybe $50, maybe $40. Even Abercrombie and Fitch, which I know to be a premium bag, it's like a $50. You can buy like a pair of $60-$80. You can buy really, really premium jeans, right? The tights should be cheaper. I said, yes, of course, honey, you can have it. And then she said, since I'm buying only one thing, can I have one more thing? And she said, can I have two instead of one? I said, sure, you can have it. And that's how she hustled me, because when I showed up at the mall, it's a $140 thing that she picked, and then $118 the one that you see. That's the other thing that my daughter has. It was a $260 very, very expensive lesson for me. So I started to spend a little bit of more time understanding what Lululemon does after that, because I really need to understand, because I didn't know they were that expensive. So if you look at what Lululemon does really, really well, they have understood their customer, their target buyer really well. Their target buyer is typically somebody who lives in suburban environment, who comes from an affluent family. They are interested in yoga, typically as the form of exercise. They're also interested in spin and other forms of exercise that are on a bicycle. They have structured their entire web store to that requirement. So if you go on Lululemon, you will never see something being advertised as 60% off, 40% off, 80% off. No, if you look at their website, the website is structured predominantly about a user's approach and the use cases, the way they use the product. The other thing that they do really, really well is that even the language of how they describe their products is very much tailored to their audience. They are building out their community by they started doing this like back in, I think, early part of 2010s, is that they started doing these yoga classes, and then they started doing spin classes and a host of other classes, but they started doing these exercise classes, yoga classes in most cases on Sunday morning. So every Sunday morning, you can go to the Lululemon store, local Lululemon store, and take a free yoga class, for example. They have also added Pilates in some cases. They have tailored it based on their audience, but the whole idea is there is an exercise class. There's a way to use your Lululemon product, the $140, $118 tights. And then they have incorporated what is called an ambassador program. Ambassadors are really, really fit people who are trainers typically. They get Lululemon product for free, and they come in and teach these classes. And the way even they describe those classes is that, Christiane is a rad human being which you will love meeting, right? Everything is on spot, on message, exactly for the target audience, tailored to give them the experience that they want when they buy a particular product. The other thing that they have done is, they have the Lululemon icon that looks like infinity symbol, prominently displayed. That's something that Nike has done. That's something a lot of other retailers have done. But the thing is, they have associated by being very, very much about suburban, affluent, eco-friendly, yoga-conscious, yoga-friendly audience. They have created that niche for themselves. So that's the reason why my daughter wanted those 140 tights, because they had that little Lululemon icon. And she swears that they're the most comfortable tights that she has ever worn in her entire life, which, from a 14-year-old means nothing to me, because at that age, you should be able to wear anything and look good and feel comfortable. But what do I know, right? I'm a 45-year-old. So that's something that's the thing about customer intimacy, is understanding exactly where they are, what their interests are, right? understanding what their preferences are, what are their values and drivers, are they eco-friendly, are they yoga-friendly, do they like exercise, what type of exercise do they like. All of that stuff factors very well into getting to the right answer in terms of branding and in terms of brand image. So great job, Lululemon. You got me out of $260 for something that probably cost you $20. But that's a lesson learned for me, right? Then let me switch stories and talk about a company called Poshmark. Again, this is something that I didn't know till last year when my niece came up and she was visiting us. I live in San Francisco. She was visiting from East Coast. She lives in New York. She's 20-something young lady who just started work, and she's like, she was fiddling on her phone, and I'm like, hey, honey, why don't you come and join us for dinner? She's like, yeah, hang on, uncle, I'm just need to buy my outfit for next week. Next weekend, I'm going out for a girls' night out, and then I have a casual weekend thing happening with a bunch of friends. I need to buy my outfit for those. I was really surprised. I'm like, you do online shopping? I thought most of the kids at your age actually go into a store, check out clothes, and do it that way. I thought fashion was something that you have to experience in person, especially when you're living in New York. She's like, yeah, but you know what? I have this cool app called Poshmark, and here is what it does. It allows me to go in, select a theme like date night or casual weekend or cocktail party. There are like 9 different themes. I select the theme, then they will. I already bought stuff with them, so they'll take my style cue from my previous purchases, and my size, which they know because I bought from them, and then they'll hook me up with 6 sellers on their marketplace, 6 designers, 6 boutiques. These sellers would create then and place outfits in my virtual dressing room, and I just go in there, look at the outfits, make a decision. If I don't like it, of course, I have free returns. And that just blew my mind, is that this is something that I thought was inherently an in-store experience. And Poshmark is a marketplace that has like 25 million SKUs. They have 3 million sellers that are signed up for it. And they have millions of monthly unique visitors like my niece that go in there. The other thing that blew my mind, which is that, after she did that, then the next day she came in and started talking to Alexa, the Amazon Alexa in my house, and started giving Alexa the instructions on what she wanted to do in terms of themes. And that is the other thing, is that Poshmark has successfully integrated Poshmark as a skill on Amazon Alexa, and has essentially done a voice-based interface in addition to the web-based interface that they have. Again, why is Poshmark so successful? Why are they growing at a rapid clip? Is a twofold prescription. One is, of course, they understood their customer. The customers are busy. Even the 20-somethings in New York are extremely busy with their daily life. They figured out that they need to offer them a unique curated experience of clothes that are in line with their fashion style, and then matching them up with really, really unique boutiques as a part of that, so that they can match the shopper style, their size with the boutique style, do that matchmaking, and allow the boutiques to bid on the business and create a virtual dressing room, which people like my niece can easily walk into and make purchases off of. This is all about form factor, understanding the customer, understanding their requirements. The requirements are they need to be able to shop based on a particular requirement, like they're going out on a date, they're going for a casual weekend with friends, they have girls' night out, they have a cocktail party. Depending on that, and depending on their fashion sense, fashion style, understand that well, understand the customer well, and then match them up with curated, selected stylists who can actually put outfits together for them. Something that takes hours and hours and hours can be done in minutes, and then you provide them with a virtual experience. Mind you, Poshmark has no retail stores, 0. This is all online marketplace, simply based on a particular customer need. So something that like fashion, something like clothes for 20-somethings, 30-somethings that are so specific, and my niece, my daughter, my wife, they are all very particular about the clothes that they wear, and even they are looking at Poshmark as something that they're buying on Poshmark because of the way Poshmark understands the customer and tailors the experience. So with that, I'm going to switch over to my third story for today. I promised you 3 stories, and this is the third story. Wish.com is the 6th largest e-commerce retailer in the world. It's a great story. 2 Google guys, really, really smart developers from Google, especially when developers from Google, you don't have to say smart by default. That's a given. They actually came out of Google in 2010 and started to create this essentially a new replacement for AdWords. So that's what they originally started with, to replace AdWords, because they thought the AdWords platform, the Google's AdWords platform, is getting long in the tooth. They tried to build it inside Google. They decided that Google wouldn't let them, so they decided to build something on their own. So they started to do that, and then they realized that, and they started to build out that platform. They said, this particular platform is really, really good at understanding the customer, understanding their interests, understanding their preferences, understanding their needs, and they pivoted that from that into an e-commerce retailer. Now, within 3 years of launching in 2011, they have billions in revenue. That's public information based on articles. They have over 300 million users across the globe, from Russia to Brazil to the United States. It's one of the fastest growing. And the reason why I know about this again is because, of course, Wish is a customer. But even beyond that, when I had when my daughter's birthday came up, so there was a birthday party. In addition to the $260 that I mentioned that I paid to Lululemon, there was a birthday party. Of course, you have to have a birthday party. And then there have to be party favors at the end of the birthday party. And all of our friends are still very much into the fidget spinners stage. So everybody is, all of these kids are, want to do something with their hands. They are nervous kids, as teenagers usually are, and they love fidget spinner, right? So my daughter has been doing a lot of using my user ID, because she can't have a user ID, she's too young. So using my user ID, she's been doing a lot of surfing on Wish.com. And then she has been searching on, she likes Batman, she likes Wonder Woman. We are huge fans of Batman in our household. So Batman Mobile is something that she has bought from Wish before. She's bought, looked at toy knives for my little niece. That is, she's 6 years old and she likes to do this pretend kitchen. So we bought toy knives for those. So we have that. We bought light up shoes for our nephew using Wish.com. So we had all this history in there. And the interesting part is when I put in fidget spinners in Wish, you can see that it comes up with very tailored results. So they have literally thousands of fidget spinners, because everything that's manufactured in Shenzhen in China, the world's probably the biggest manufacturing hub, all of those, bulk of those sellers are on there, right? So literally it's thousands of fidget spinners. How do you pick the fidget spinner that Gaurav Deshpande or who he is buying for is likely to pick, right? That was the tailored result, is that particular fidget spinner with the light up, that lights up, because I had bought light up toys for my nephew before. The Batman one, which I bought for my nephew and also for my daughter, because she's a Batman fan. So there's a fidget spinner that looks like a Batman icon. The toy knives that I bought, they have incorporated that, where there is a version of a knife that it's a toy knife, so it's not, doesn't hurt you. It swivels out just the way, so you can play with it, and it's made of plastic, so it won't hurt anybody. This is what I mean by customer intimacy, right? The understanding of what I have done in the past on Wish app, what I bought, and then tailoring that experience based on my likely to be what my immediate need is, which is fidget spinner, and actually finding all the other things that I've done in the past and relating those. That's why, and when I searched on Amazon, it just came up with a regular plain vanilla looking fidget spinner with different types of variety of that. So that's the traditional approach, right? Here's the difference between what came up with Amazon on the next chart. You can see that when I search on fidget spinner, they gave me a really, really good quality fidget spinner. That's fine. Then typically there is a frequently bought together, which is a product, what I call the product likeness approach, where you have a particular category like toys, a subcategory within that, fidget spinners, and related products associated with that. It's based on substitution, right? You can buy this one or another type of fidget spinner or something that's complementary. That says, here is a case for the fidget spinner that you can keep the fidget spinner in. And then on the right-hand side, you can see customer likeness type of approach, which Amazon follows, which is you have the Thor's hammer. And I have no idea why Amazon showed me this, because I've never bought anything related to Thor as a character. We are not fans of Thor in the family. I have never searched for Thor. I have never browsed any Thor items. I don't know why it showed me that. I even don't know why it showed me rest of the stuff, because I haven't bought something related to a cube either. But this is the typical approach, is that you're saying, oh, customers who bought it also bought this. That approach works well if you're trying to do something that is like for masses, but if you're going to tailor your experience, curate it for a specific buyer, then the Wish approach works a lot better. And that's what I mean. You need to really build out a real-time customer 360-degree profile. And the real-time part is key. The reason why it's key is because the customer needs are changing all the time. Their preferences are changing all the time. So the fact that we got the light-up toy for my nephew a few days before, something that I've been searching and browsing on even right before I looked at fidget spinner. If you can incorporate those things as a part of that, then literally you are reading your customer's mind. You're trying to look at their interests. They're looking at their preferences. So if you look at this chart, let's start from the bottom, and I'll explain this chart for a moment here. If you look at the bottom of this chart, you have the location. This part is really important, because when you're starting to tailor your assortment, I know all of you guys do that currently, but if you tailor the assortment in terms of location-specific preferences, that's interesting. What do I mean by that here? Let's take an example that of my own family. My wife recently started to get into whole organic thing. So we have organic garden. We've been growing organic vegetables. Based on San Francisco Bay Area, people who are interested in organic vegetables, organic eating, organic lifestyle are also sometimes interested in vegan lifestyle, right? So those two are correlated. That's correlated with yoga. That's what I mean by location-specific tailoring. So as you start to understand correlations and you start to typically use a machine learning algorithm, you want to be able to connect those dots and bring those back to your customer 360-degree profile so you can start to tailor your recommendations. Demographic on the left-hand side, coming up clockwise, is something that we all know. This is something that the age, the gender of the person, whether they live in urban environment, suburban environment, or country or rural environment, so on and so forth. That is basic stuff that needs to be factored in. Next to that is the browsing history, right? What has the customer been looking at recently? What have they spent time looking at? Then the search history, which is actually what are they searching for. Their likes and reviews, if they've added those, their order history, what they've actually spent money on, what their channel interaction looks like, and what devices they are using. Once you consider the stuff around the outer perimeter, now you factor it in and you start to deduce what are likely to be the customer's values. That means, are they patriotic, right? Are they somebody who is interested? Are they value conscious or brand conscious? Are they somebody that is eco-friendly? What are their immediate needs and what are likely to be their future needs? What are their interests? They are interested in toys. They are interested in superheroes. Those type of interests. Their preferences. Are they interested in utility? Are they interested in efficiency, convenience, variety? What does their network look like? Who are they connected? Who else are they connected to on our network as a part of it? And if they are logged in with their Facebook ID, if you have access to that network picture, that's great as well. And then finally, drivers. What are the drivers that incentivize them to buy, right? Is it value? Is it luxury? What is it? All of that picture together is a 360-degree profile. And once I go through the technology, you will realize that it's very easy to put that together with TigerGraph, because you can connect the dots very easily across everything that's on the outer perimeter, the location, the demographic, the search and browsing history, the likes and reviews, the order history, the channel interaction, all of that, and then deduce what's in the middle circle, the interests, the preferences, the network, the drivers, the values, the needs, right? This is what I mean by customer intimacy. So what we recommend, and this is what Wish has done successfully, is to combine the customer 360, combine that with product, and intersection of that then becomes, in real time, becomes a product recommendation engine. Again, going back to the fidget spinner example that I mentioned, here is what it looks like. Here is how it came up with that particular screenshot that you saw. This is Gaurav, that's me in the middle. I have in the order history. Let's start from the bottom. So my location is San Francisco. Then go to the left-hand side, browsing and search history. As a part of that, I have browsed toy knives. Actually, I have bought them as well. And then there is rainbow-colored pencils that I bought for my niece, who is 6 years old. So it's factored that in. Then there's order history, where I have Batmobile that I've ordered from Wish in the past. I've ordered light up toys, light up shoes for my nephew. So it has factored that in. My friend John is part of Wish platform as well, and I've asked a question directly about him, about light up toys to him using the app. So it has that factor. There is superheroes on the right-hand side in terms of interests. So there are several interests that you can model any number of interests that you want in a graph database. But here, specifically, I take an example of superhero category within the interest. There's Batman, there's Superman, there's Wonder Woman. In this case, I have been linked to Batman because I bought Batman stuff in the past. As I start to browse more and more of the Wonder Woman, it will link me with that art as well. Now, in terms of preferences, I like variety, right? Because of based on my shopping. Because if you look at my shopping, it's like all over the place, right? There's light up shoes, there is Batmobile, there's a host of things. So I don't buy just in one category. I like variety in categories. And then there are a few other preferences like convenience, sensory, effort, DIY, so on and so forth. Now, since I have not bought fidget spinner as yet, it hasn't linked me with the sensory piece. After I buy it, after I start browsing it, within a matter of minutes, it will start linking me with the sensory preference as well. So device used is the iPhone that my daughter has. She actually has an iPhone 10, better phone than mine, but that's a story for another day. And then all you see here is how that recommendation was built out in the Wish app based on that, right? So you see the first item, which is actually the fidget spinner that lights up. You see the light up shoes on the left-hand side. That's how it has tailored that. You see the Batmobile, the Batman-shaped, bat-shaped fidget spinner. That's because of my Batman affinity to Batman as a superhero. There is the toy knife that is a swivel type of thing, which you can use as a fidget spinner as well. And then last but not the least, as I start to do more and more of this, and it realizes that I'm interested in sensory stuff, it will start to add Rubik's Cube and other things in there. So this is what I mean by actually personalizing for a target buyer. You saw the difference between what Amazon presented, which was simple product likeness based or customer likeness based recommendation, as opposed to something that's truly tailored to what I like. Okay? And what is the difference between what Amazon does and what Wish does? Industry benchmarks show that Wish is product recommendations are 3 times more likely to be accepted by the customer and bought than Amazon. So that's the difference. What does that do? It results in a 10% higher order value, and that's a huge increase in terms of revenue. So now let's switch gears and look at how do we enable this. Essentially, we are talking about interconnected data. Remember, I started my talk with that. Graphs are the most natural way of representing interconnected data. Easiest way to think about it, and my daughter helped me think through this. I try to explain to people what relational databases are, like Oracle, DB2, and what graph databases like TigerGraph are. And I said, relational databases have tables, one table for customer, one for order, one for address, one for countries or locations, one for product. And those are like separate tables, and then they are joined together to get the insights, while graph naturally stores the data as we see it in our head as interconnected objects. So my daughter said, easy way to explain this, Daddy, and I agree with her, is that remember our last year's middle school dance, how it started with boys on one side, girls on the other side? That's how relational databases are. Each data is stored in its own separate table. And then graph databases are, remember at the end of the party how girls and boys are always dancing together and having fun? That's graph databases. So that's an easy way to remember. I couldn't offer a better metaphor. Hopefully that works for you. But that's something that I find it easy to explain. So that's the difference between relational and graph database. So inherently, graph database is an interconnected data model. It's the best model to represent relationships between different types of data entities, right? So with that, our mission statement is very simple: unleash the power of interconnected data. And why do we do that? For deeper insights and better outcomes. Because there's no point in doing something without giving you more insights than what you have currently, and giving you better outcomes, like increasing your order value, increasing your customer loyalty, increasing the amount of time the customers come back and revisit your website. By the way, product recommendation, real-time product recommendation have been known to show 3 times more likelihood of customer coming back and buying from you if they buy a product recommendation that was spot on the money, that was perfectly tailored for them. So in addition to the 10% increase in the e-commerce order value, you can also count on 3 times higher probability that the customer will actually come back and buy from you. That's the reason why you do it. So it's all about better outcomes, better insights. Without that, power of interconnected data is good for nothing. So that's the reason why we structured it that way. That's been our charter for the last 6 years. A little bit about graph databases, and I know many of you guys are not technical, but I'm just going to give you a very high-level evolution of how graph databases evolve. This concept has been around for the last 15 years. It started with a company called Neo4j. It's an open source graph database. That's the Graph 1.0. Original intention behind Neo4j and graph databases that we call the first generation graph databases was visualization. People considered this mainly as something that you put data in and then you visualize the data. Remember I talked about how graph databases represent the same way that you see the data in your head. That's how it's represented inside the database. That was the power of Graph 1.0 databases. So they are great because they have native graph storage. That means they store the information as connected data. They suffer from various disadvantages, like they don't have parallel loading. Typically, if you, in retail especially, all of you know this, and in insurance and banking, the rest of the industries as well, when you are really trying to do something meaningful in a large enterprise or even a mid-sized enterprise, you have a lot of data. When you try to load it up inside a Graph 1.0, it takes days to load a terabyte of data. They're trying to accelerate it. Neo4j, for example, did a 3.4 release announcement today where they accelerated it by 50%. Fantastic. Instead of taking 10 days, it's going to take 5 days. It still does not solve my problem with respect to the window that I have, right? So when you're trying to load terabytes of data like we do in retail, like we do in case of banking, like we do in case of insurance, like we do in telecom, it's not useful for them. Parallel multi-hop analytics. That's what I mean by when you're starting to navigate the customer's network, the customer buying a particular product, the customer having a particular interest, particular preference, particular activity that they're interested in. As you start to go across those multiple hops within the network, after 3 hops or so, Graph 1.0 databases do not do well. And we didn't see anything in the Neo4j announcement that addressed that particular part. The difference in performance is huge because when you're trying to go across, let's say 7 hops, 6 or 7 hops across a reasonably sized graph database, it can take hours again for Graph 1.0 queries to finish, if they finish at all. TigerGraph typically gets done in sub-second or takes like 3 or 4 seconds in cases where the machine is a smaller machine. That's the difference. Parallel updates, same story. As you have more and more retail data pouring, as you have more e-commerce orders, as you have more browsing history, search history, all of that information, typically 1.0 and Graph 1.0 was not built for that, and therefore it doesn't handle parallel updates very well. Graph 2.0 is actually able to load up the data. So it was built on top of Apache's Cassandra toolset, and it does very good job of loading up the data. Where it suffers is the multi-hop analytics. When you start to go across more than 3 hops across the network, when you try to do updates to that data and run queries on it at the same time, that's when it starts to go get affected. Lastly, privacy for sensitive data. Graph 1.0 Neo4j has started adding features here that will start to address this requirement, but the real requirement is a lot more complex than what has been provided by Graph 1.2 and 2.0 tools. And we'll be coming out soon with a technical statement that specifically talks about customers' use cases and what is required for real privacy in the graph database world. There's a benchmark list that I've listed at the bottom. Very simple, https://info.tigergraph.com/benchmark. Go see it for yourself. We'll be updating that benchmark document as soon as the new versions of Neo4j come out. So you have a comparison for that also. So what are the 6 facets? What are the 6 ways that TigerGraph is unique? Starting from the bottom left-hand side, scalability for massive data sets. We were born on the enterprise for solving the biggest graph database problem. Our CEO, Dr. Yushu, who literally has the PhD in massively parallel computing and databases, built that from scratch because he couldn't see he couldn't see a technology to solve that problem, either at Twitter when he was trying to build a social graph at Twitter, or at Teradata before that, which has another vendor for massively parallel warehouses. Scalability for massive data is where we excel. Coming to the left-hand side, transactional or mutable graph. This is a technical term, but easiest way to think about it is as you have orders being generated, as you have search history, as you have browsing history, as you have likes and dislikes on social media, all of that can be updated inside the graph in real time so that you can influence the outcome. Real-time performance, we talked about this a little bit. As you start to increase the data, amount of data in it, whether you're an insurance company, you're a bank, or you're a retailer, as you start to load up the data and you have millions of customers in there, or hundreds of millions in case of how big a retailer you are, and then you have billions of data points, that's when the real-time performance really matters, because you need to be able to analyze that data in real time, not wait for it for 2 hours to come back. On the right-hand side, deep link multi-hop, this is a flavor of real time, but also it goes into more hops than what is typically possible with Graph 1.0 and 2.0. Privacy for sensitive data with the latest regulation in the European Union called GDPR, right? General Data Protection Regulation. This has become a big deal. Now, GDPR is just beginning, and that the first set of requirements are 10% of what the real regulation would be in 5 to 6 years. So there'll be more and more increasing requirements around privacy, not just from EU. Japan is putting something similar together. India is putting something similar together. United States will soon follow suit. So as you start to looking at it, especially as we have sensitive data related to customers, remember I talked about value of customer data, and you've all realized that with the Facebook debacle with Cambridge Analytica, it becomes even more important that you provide a full-scale solution, not a partial solution for privacy of sensitive data. Last but not the least, GSQL is our query interpreter, our graph query language. It scales beautifully, and it is designed from ground up to be a parallel processing language. So in graph database terms, we have what are called nodes, which are like products, orders, and then there are relationship between nodes that are called edges. Every node is a storage unit, but also it's a computational unit. Every edge computes in parallel as well. So that's the thing to understand, is that everything is, think of the database itself as being alive. Usually databases storage is passive and it doesn't do computation. In our case, it computes as well. So that's what makes it so scalable and have such a high performance. I'm going to leave you with this. I just wanted to include it as a part of the reference. We have the natively built graph storage engine that was built from ground up to be parallel processing, massively parallel processing. Same thing with the processing engine, GPE, graph processing engine. On top of that, we have user-defined functions, and we also have the ability to define custom user-defined functions in C++. We support GSQL. GSQL is our query language. We have a great white paper comparing our query language GSQL with Cypher and Gremlin, that are other query languages out there. And we have a great visualization layer that is best in the industry. With that, the proof is in the pudding, right? Number one in all of these categories. Alipay, number one e-payment company in the world. Visa, number one US payment company. Wish, number one for mobile e-commerce, 6th largest e-commerce in the world, giving Alibaba and Amazon a run for their money when it comes to mobile e-commerce. Uber, number one in world ride sharing. Elementum, number one in global supply chain. State Grid of China, powering 1.3 billion people in China, managing all of their power grid modeled inside our graph database, scaling up to manage outages, predict outages, and figure out how to manage it effectively. How do you learn more about TigerGraph? Very simple. 3 actions I would ask of you to consider. Download the e-commerce solution brief if you like what you see in today's, and you can also see a bunch of other solution briefs in there. Read the benchmark report. As I mentioned, we are solving multiple problems for different clients. We are doing fraud prevention. We are doing anti-money laundering. We have supply chain analysis. We have IT infrastructure impact assessment, where Visa, for example, is using us for managing across thousands of their servers. What happens if a particular server goes down? Impact analysis related to that. You can find all of that information under tigergraph.com/resources. Benchmark report, right? You'll always have the question, how does it compare to the 1.0, Graph 1.0 and Graph 2.0 solutions? You can find it there. Last but not the least, go check it out for yourself. I've included the link there. If you are looking at this for your enterprise, for commercial use, go and try the full enterprise edition and experience the power of TigerGraph for 2 weeks. If you need more time after 2 weeks, come back to us and we'll be happy to extend it as long as it's for your enterprise usage. So with that, let me, Emily, let me open it up for questions and let's see what questions we have from the audience.
Great. So if you want to ask a question, you can use the Q&A feature and we'll go ahead and answer it. But there's one question about can the solution be used for point of sales analysis?
Okay, great question. I see some retailers in there, and that used to be my industry for many, many years. So happy to have you guys join us here. Point of sales data, absolutely. You can load up all of your point of sales data into TigerGraph. Remember, I mentioned massive scalability. We are live in production with 100 billion nodes. So think of node as individual data points, and you can scale up for even more depending on the hardware and the performance that you need. So you can load up all of your points of sales data if you want, all of your orders, all of your search and browsing history, all of your social media data. And the best part about the flexibility in TigerGraph is that the schema is completely flexible. You can add new types of data. For those of you who are coming from the relational database, you're used to having like submitting a request and then schema gets updated in 2 to 3 months with 5 attributes. When you want to add 5 new fields and you want to add a new data attribute, you want to add a new table, everything has to be re-indexed and optimized. Well, welcome to TigerGraph, where you can add that on the fly. You can add that in a matter of hours, not days or weeks or months. And we do auto indexing, which means you don't have to worry about indexing the new features that you're adding, the new attributes that you're adding. The other thing I wanted to mention is one of the things that people are doing is that feeding TigerGraph based insights into the machine learning to improve the accuracy of that. But we'll do another deep dive session on that, where we'll have an expert with 48 years of retail experience come and tell you all about it. But I just wanted to mention that that's one of the things that's coming up. So absolutely, load POS data in there, point of sale data in there, load your store data in there, load your distribution center data in there, load your IoT, Internet of Things data in it. All of it can be handled, and it's easy to manage and administer using TigerGraph.
Great, thank you. And then just another question, is there a developer edition?
Great question. I was going to wrap up with that, but I'm glad that question came up. Yes, the current trial that we have, 2-week trial, it's for commercial usage for enterprises. For example, if you're part of Dillard, JCPenney, Sears, you want to try out this actually in your enterprise. You can sign up for that using your Sears email address, your JCPenney, your Dillard, Walmart email address, and you can actually sign up for that. And of course, we'll extend the license for you as needed for you to complete your due diligence. The developer edition is coming out because we have been receiving hundreds of requests for that, and we will have it out in a few weeks. We have that announcement coming up soon, so stay tuned. Follow our blog at TigerGraph, and we will let you know soon enough. And I know that a lot of people want to get their hands on it. A lot of people want to learn G-SQL, our query language, compare it to Cypher and Gremlin. And remember, I mentioned that there's a white paper under TigerGraph resources where you can actually see the white paper comparing our G-SQL language with Cypher and Gremlin. You can read that for now and wait for a few weeks. We know you want it. We will give it to you in a few weeks, and there'll be a big announcement around it. That's about it. Any other questions?
No, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy days, and have a great rest of the day. And I'm available at gaurav@tigergraph.com. You can reach out to me anytime with any questions. I have about 15 years of experience in retail. I'm happy to help you with any questions you have, or banking or insurance or any other industry that you want to work with me on. Thank you, and have a great day. Bye.